I think that the minutes from the last meeting may have the wrong date. I'm sorry, I should have looked at this sooner, but I think it was the ones from August about the communications plan, but I think we did meet in November or December as part of the packet. It's just something that should probably be fixed. I'm sorry, I don't have the date of the last meeting. I can't remember if it was November or December. Okay, I will hand it off then. Is the chief also going to take minutes and do the staff report?
Sure.
Okay, that's a big job, but.
Well, I'm gonna have Lieutenant Liebenthal will be doing a lot of the talking, so that'll be fine.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So in your packet is a memo on kind of where we're at right now. And I think the important part of what this is about is giving you an opportunity to give us feedback and some direction on where you think we should head next. And what we did is, I think on December 21st, we presented the Excel document to you that outlined all of the recommendations from the consultant. And what we've now done is we've taken that Excel document and put them into the different buckets under records management, complaint process, community engagement, review of organizational structure, and traffic enforcement. And so we did our best to take all of those items that were in that Excel document, which, if you remember, the Excel document listed every recommendation that was in the study. We've now taken that Excel document and we've put them into these buckets, the 5 buckets. And so what we would like to go through, and Lieutenant Liebenthal has done a lot of work in this, and so I'll turn it over to him fairly soon. But what we've done is we've broken it down into 3 different areas in each of those buckets. The items that have been completed, what we believe are some recommended next steps, and then future items that we believe should be addressed in the future. And so within those 5 buckets, we have those 3 recommendations. And in those 5 buckets is every recommendation from the study. So it should be fairly comprehensive from that respect. What I will have now is Lieutenant Liebenthal go through each one of those buckets and discuss what we've completed, what we believe are the next steps, and what the future items might be. I think the important piece to this is that we're here to get your feedback, your suggestions, and your guidance on how we should proceed moving forward. So though we may have something outlined or something that we've already completed, or we have something that you would like to see differently, this is an opportunity for that feedback and discussion. So I will turn it over, unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Liebenthal.
I did have one question quick. I'm looking for, I think at that meeting then the trustees had 4 or 5 priorities that align pretty closely. And I'm looking, I thought I had those at my fingertips and now I don't. Do you recall?
Yeah, so the 5 buckets are the 5 areas where the trustees put into.
It is, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And what we did is we did our best to take all of those items from that Excel document and to put them in those 5 buckets.
Right, okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. And then another topic or another item is that you'll see as we go through the memo that each item has a number associated with that. That number is referenced in the Excel document as a cross-check to make sure that we maintain some continuity, because there's a lot of moving parts. And so we've taken that Excel document and now put it into the buckets, but I did not want to lose track of the overall Excel document.
Thank you.
So Lieutenant Liebenthal, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, so going through the document, the first area that we have in the memo here is the records management area. And one of the items that the consultant had on there was to stop allowing staff to generate calls within the CAD system. And it should be done by Bayside Communications instead. So that was item number 70. And so we've issued a directive, to the staff, telling them that they are to no longer generate their own calls within the CAD system. Everything must be done through Bayside Dispatch. And we have updated policy 800 pertaining to the Bayside's Communication Center to reflect this. This is something that was rarely done by the officers, primarily for business checks or crime prevention patrol type situations. They really won't have much of a change on our operations as far as that goes. It wasn't something that was widely spread and widely done. In terms of the next steps of what we're looking at within the records management system, it's kind of really important that everyone understands what our records management system is and how, the overall totality of it. We share this records management system across the entire North Shore. All the North Shore police departments are involved in this records management system, and Bayside Communications is the primary license holder for it. And everything that is done through our dispatch center, our reporting, all of the information that gets captured in terms of charges, names, calls for service, whatever, what have you, it all gets captured in there. And everything is all consolidated within the whole North Shore. So all of the North Shore communities utilize the same system. And so it's important to keep in mind that when we're talking about looking at changing and doing things within the records management system, that some of these things would potentially have impact, not just here, but within the entire North Shore. And as such, we'd have to have everyone basically be on the same page with us with that.
Trustee Warren, is it okay, Chief Lieutenant Liebenthal, if I interject if I see a hand?
Sure.
Go ahead, Trustee Warren.
I was just wondering to that point, is there any opportunity to collaborate with the North Shore if we're looking at trying to make sure that our data is better, deeper, kind of more usable? Have we had any conversations, I guess, with neighboring municipalities about any opportunities you might have to do that kind of thing? And I understand and completely take your point that this is used by several communities, so any change to us is going to inherently be a change to them. But I'm just wondering if there's any kind of collective conversation that we can have where people are getting similar types of requests and similar types of requests for documentation, where we could leverage those relationships and do something collectively.
I'll address that. So I think it's important, if the next thing we'll be talking about is the data collection form, I think. Is that?
Yes.
Yes, in that same topic, we'll be talking about the traffic stop data collection form. So I think one of the important pieces that we discovered while going through the study is that the information is there. In particular, I know traffic stops was a particular item of conversation. And so we weren't collecting the information in a specific manner. It was just like everybody else was doing it. But now we've implemented within this system, and it always had it, we just didn't know it had it, was the traffic stop data collection form. And so now on each and every traffic stop, the officer has to fill out this form. And so by completing the form, the traffic stop information that we seek to obtain will be there. And so I think it's important to point out that the information is there. And I think some of the struggles with the consultant were on the specific way he wanted the information laid out in Excel. And it just, that became really the main issue to work with the vendor to be able to do that. Now with traffic stop data in particular, we'll be able to, do this report in a much more efficient way that will produce the information that we need. And so that will be beneficial. So I hope that answers partly your question.
No, thank you.
I have a follow-up then. If we can move on, then are we pretty much ready to move on to the traffic stop data? I guess my question here is, as I see this, one of the issues of consolidation and saving money going to the main dispatch is we don't have a lot of local control. And we're going to have to work with 6 other communities if we want a change at the dispatch level. So if someone calls and says, I see a suspicious character, I want this checked out, but the person is a Black person, right? And so there's some profiling going on by a resident. What can we do as one member of a 7 municipality consortium to try to remove racism from that sort of sending out a call? So like, are the dispatch people trained to tease out the details to figure out, is this someone asking for something based upon a prejudicial bias? Or do you understand what I'm saying?
And one of the things that our officers will try to do in those types of circumstances, if we get a call of that type of nature, is we try to, if we're not getting the information, we try to prompt the information from our dispatchers as more towards what are the specific suspicious behaviors that are being observed or being reported. What are the actions that this person is doing that are suspicious in nature? And so we try to get that information from the dispatcher if they're not readily collecting it and giving it out when they're giving the call information to us. That's a regular
That's
practice.
great that our officers are trying to be proactive on their own. But I guess maybe my question is directed to President Rozak and Rebecca, who are on the North Shore Fire Department in those meetings. I guess I'm just saying, obviously our focus here tonight, and I don't want to get off task here, but we can only do so much when we're in a dispatch system, unless we're hearing rumblings from other municipalities that maybe we need more training or something. President Rozak?
Oh, I have a question, but I'll answer your question first. I've dealt with dispatch a lot, and it sounds like it's a form. It's just a form that we're asking dispatch to fill out. And Lieutenant Lementhal and the chief would know better, but I don't know that would be such a hardship that everyone had to be exactly. They do know our department flow when I call in. And if we have a form that they fill out, that we ask them to fill out, I don't know that would be such a hardship. And I don't know that every municipality, the other police departments actually would have the dispatch do the same thing. I think that a form is very reasonable for them to fill out. And so I wouldn't shy away from at least making the request. And I think it's a great idea. Rebecca, do you have anything to add? And then I can ask my question.
Which form are we talking about?
Are you talking about when someone calls in and it's being standardized of what they write down, dispatch, about the call? What Lieutenant Leventhal?
So I guess that's the question. So the form that was in our packet tonight has race optional. Is that the form that we're looking at is part of the traffic stop data collection form from Phoenix that our officers would use, not the one Bayside dispatch uses. Is that correct?
The
Right,
form
the form that the officers are filling out is the traffic stop data collection form. Though it says that the race is optional, they have to complete that field in order for the form to work.
Okay.
Sorry.
And they all know that. So we can't take the word optional off. They just know that they have to fill that part out.
The form will not go through.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tom.
The portion that Trustee Sorokabrand is referring to, there's race of driver, and then right next to that on the form is optional race information. So that would be if we knew, for example, the race list on the driver's license as being white, but it's of Hispanic origin. So the optional information is this Hispanic or non-Hispanic? That's what that field is for, essentially.
I'm sorry, I apologize because I got those two mixed up. But dispatch, I have called in, and it is Lieutenant Leventhal. They do try to tease out questions. To Trustee Sorokabrand's question of how can you get more information of why they're calling in. I do think it would be helpful to standardize those questions, whether it's a form or not, because every time I've called in, it just varies greatly. So any type of standardization would be great at dispatch.
All the dispatchers that are hired by Bayside go through their own training over there. They're trained on how to field these calls, what type of information to get in these course of these calls. Now, in some cases, people may be not collect all the information because they're trying to multitask and process multiple things going on at the same time. And sure, it could be that this little piece of information slipped their mind to ask, and that's why it's important if our officers aren't getting that information, that they ask that information. So they all go through an extensive training over at Bayside, which I can't speak to, overall as far as I haven't gone through their full training program, but I know all their dispatchers go through a full training program over at Bayside. They have their own training that they end up going through, very similar to like how our officers go through a field training program when we hire them. So how
Okay,
they're,
we
what,
just- I'm sorry, go ahead.
and all that, I couldn't tell you all the answers to that particular.
Okay, and I guess my question would be just, training is all relative to the time that you're trained in. And I would hope that as a member of the North Shore Fire Department and Dispatch, we're pushing for continual and updated training because, sensitivities and sensibilities change with time. Trustee Bachhorst had a question.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Stokerbrand. So yeah, now you bring up a very good point regarding the consolidated services with the dispatch. And as that's a great thing for all of us to remember on this committee and on the full board, because we do not have autonomy over, anything when there's consolidated. We'll see that tonight, and we've seen that with the health department as well, right? Often it's with consolidation, of course, there's cost savings, but you can also, a lot of the decision-making might go to the lowest common denominator. So these are great questions, and I want us to keep this in mind so that when we do go to renew our contract with them and others, that, we push for more stuff. And that's usually when we can get it is when those things are renewed. So anyway, I'll save my rest of my questions to see if it's answered by the presentation. Thank you.
And Trustee Stoker, I just had a general question. I know that
President Rozek?
the consultant isn't here, and I'm just wondering in general, as we go through at the committee level to develop some sort of action plan and what we want to be focusing on and how we're going to start implementing. Was it always the plan not to have the consultant present during this phase?
I believe the contract ended when he presented his report.
Okay, I think it would be very helpful to have an outside party going through this with us, but I understand if, and maybe that's for a future agenda item. Okay,
I
thank you.
guess we'd have to decide if we want to spend more money, right?
Right, future agenda item, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I noticed, so we've been doing the traffic, some traffic data for several months now, and then the additional with the other information. Chief Nimmer, did you have a date to start that in those monthly reports? Was that like March or April?
You can go ahead, Tom.
All right, with the traffic stop data, we're actually planning on putting that in our next report that we push out for, which would be for January, once that's completed, utilizing the data that we did collect through this form. Now, this form, right now, it's only active for the village of Shorewood. That's something that we worked with the vendor on, that they were able to make that active to us and make it active only for our agency at this point, because it's not something that's going to be affecting the rest of the North Shore. So our vendor has been very receptive to trying to work with us on getting different things. The information that the consultant wanted in particular about the traffic stops, because of the very specific way that he wanted the information, it was not readily available, as the chief had said, but they worked with us to get this information because they understood the importance of getting it, and that we may not be the only municipality in this area that's going to be asking for that. And so they specifically went and wrote a program to get the information that we were able to get to the consultant in the format that he wanted it. So they are someone who is open to working with us in that regard. They have talked about future releases of the product should be a little bit better as far as being able to do more customization of reports. But that's all stuff that's down the road in the future here that they're continuing to work on. So, but again, the traffic stop data form is out there. It is something that we are utilizing right now. And it is going to be something that's going to be pushed out in our monthly reports as we move forward here.
But I think it's important to point out that we did not get it started until January, what?
14th, I want to say.
So by the time we got it up and running and worked through the some of the problems with it, we consistently started using it on January, whatever date Tom will tell you.
So the monthly data won't be accurate. It'll be a partial month.
It'll be a
Correct.
partial month for this first month, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think it's great that we're doing this, and I'd be shocked and a little bit disappointed if other communities in the North Shore didn't. My understanding is Pro Phoenix is used widely, and
Yes.
if the first one's asking, then good for us, right?
Yeah, it's used across the country in different areas, and pretty much most of Milwaukee County, except for the city of Milwaukee, I believe utilizes Pro Phoenix. January 11th was the date that the form was actually activated, and was starting to be used by us the morning of the 12th. That's when it first came online for us. So, and if you were to look at the consultant's report at his attachment that he had for his form for similar nature, everything that he has in his form is collected in this form. So there's no difference in that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
We can be a leader in this area and push that vendor to do something that those companies should have been providing to municipalities for years, in my view. Thank you.
Okay, moving forward in our memo here, the complaint process would be the next item that's on here. And we've completed multiple items within that, particularly basically changing some language that we had in here. Like item number 47 in our administrative procedures within our policy should be changed to read that the investigator shall record all interviews of members and witnesses. And the policy was updated to reflect the suggested language change. Item number 48 was suggesting to defining reasonable completion of time for complaint investigation, and our policy was updated to reflect that our investigation should be completed within 6 months or 6 weeks, excuse me. Item number 49, complaint should be at a minimum be provided a monthly complainant should be provided a monthly update on the status of their complaint. And our policy was updated to reflect that complainants should receive monthly updates as to the status of their investigations.
So one thing I might add to the new form is, because we have now added the box for anonymity, obviously, if you file a complaint anonymously, you can expect no follow-up. I mean, I think
Right.
It's important to just be honest. Put the policy on the form that says, our goal is to have this completed in 6 months. You will get a monthly update. However, obviously, if you file it anonymously, we cannot, we'll still keep to our part of it. We will do these things. I mean, I guess the monthly update, if the person filing the charge doesn't want it, should someone else still, you know what I'm saying? To just make sure that it's moving along. Trustee Warren?
Yeah, just to add to that, kind of looking at, I appreciate, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I was kind of thinking through as you were talking. And, for me, this is about really just trying to think thematically, transparency and kind of governance. So, as we think about next steps, I think of like 37, 59, 62, 64, stuff where we're making it, I think people expect to kind of be met where they are. So making it easier to file a complaint online, making it kind of transparent as to how to do that, making there be awareness that, hey, we have this avenue by which to file complaints and then follow up. And then I think it's also important that you have kind of a clear governance portion too, which is why I which is why I was looking at item 30, which is, what's the role of the police commission? So I think those two things alone, when you're talking transparency and clear governance, I think that'll really enhance our complaint process and really kind of, bring this item to a good resolution. So maybe I'm jumping wildly ahead here, but those are the themes that I'm thinking about when I look at this.
Sure. Well, just to jump ahead slightly here, for our items for our future consideration, one of the things that we had planned on doing with our next meeting here was to bring the current complaint procedure form, complaint brochure for your review and to get input from the commission here regarding those items. So, and again, regarding the items that are listed below that you've already kind of jumped ahead and looked at it a little bit from there. So that is something that we do want to go through the next time we meet and get some input on those items.
I just had a question about item 63. So let's say someone comes in with an informal complaint. So someone comes to the police department and they say, I've got this issue, but I don't want to file a formal complaint. I want to do it informally. So are you the same process, the same software?
One of the items that's in an attachment within your packet there is a citizen complaint summary form. And when we have those types of situations where a citizen comes in and they don't fill out the entire form packet that we have available online or in the station or in, you know, the multiple locations that they can get it, the supervisor who addresses the complaint, who handles the complaint, receives the complaint, will fill out the citizen complaint summary. And all that information will be captured from that. And then the complaint will be pushed forward for further review through our internal process at that point. So it is captured and documented.
How do you do it?
But like, I guess my question is, so you've got these, so the staff will rely on the staff to obviously stick to the monthly update, even though there's no victim known, perhaps it's informal. And the 60-day, what was the timeline? It'll just be, staff will take that upon itself, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your
So
question?
if there's an informal complaint, it's just treated the same way. So the deadlines will apply. And
Yes.
do we want to have someone, if there's no person filing the complaint, do we want to have someone appointed to be the person who would have filed, and someone should report to them what they found then? I put that out there as something to think about. President Rozek?
I'm a little concerned about what an informal complaint is. I mean, if someone wants to call and make a complaint, then it's a complaint, whether it's formal or informal. I think we need to collect the same data and make sure we just stop calling it formal and informal. I mean, it's a complaint, and when you make them fill out the form and you follow the process. And I don't know the difference between the two.
So my understanding is that if you make it informal, people might be more likely to file it. And if our goal is to have more input from the community, so that they don't feel intimidated or whatever, that we would make it open. And that's part of like making it anonymous, right? So American jurisprudence generally says you get to confront your accuser. But in order to make this more open and to make people feel more comfortable, if you feel like you have been treated wrongly, we're trying to make it as...
So is the answer anonymous? That's what makes it informal? I would like to,
I don't think so. I don't think so.
The answer, please.
I'm sorry, who do you want to answer, President Rozek?
Lieutenant Liebenthal, if he could.
Lieutenant Liebenthal?
Well, the verbiage that's being thrown around of formal and informal basically came from the consultant. He was the one who started utilizing the formal and informal verbiage there. We've always had our complaint form that people are always welcome to fill out and submit. He felt that it was something that was intimidating to people and that people may not be willing to go through the whole process of filling it out, that putting their name on the complaint, and they may be more hesitant to come forward with complaints. And so rather than requiring that people will go and fill out the formal form, the quote unquote formal form, we are capturing the information when people will either walk into the station or make a phone call to us or even initiate through an email, essentially, that we will go through and document the summary of the complaint so that we can further investigate the complaint utilizing the citizen complaint summary form that we have included in the package.
Thank you. And I just want to follow up to thank you so much, because that's what I thought. And I would say it's very similar to, like, I'm protecting the police officers. I just don't feel like, I mean, if you're going to make a complaint against a police officer or a complaint against, a racial complaint of discrimination or any of that type, I really feel it's necessary that they have their name attached to it. And the reason I say that is for follow-up reasons, and because it's kind of like the affidavit process when they make a complaint against a public official or a official of our village. You got to sign it. I mean, I understand that we're being sensitive, but we're really opening ourselves up. I mean, we have a process, you have a form, and if you're willing to make a complaint, there's no shame in a complaint. And I don't know how to follow up if I was a police department with no address, no name. It's very difficult. I think it should be standardized.
Well, we'll still go through and make the best effort that we can to investigate whatever complaints come in, and if it's missing information as far as the name of the complainant and their signature on a document, we're still going to do the best we can to follow up and investigate with what we can. I mean, we do have call logs, we do have reports, we do have body cameras, we do have things that we can go back and look at to see what other information we can gather off of that.
And they're public, right? I could come in and file a public open records request and get that video cam, and you're going to see who the person is anyways. I just feel like
Yeah, I understand.
public knowledge. I mean, if you're going to make a complaint, it's a public record. And how do you have a public record that's anonymous? Thank you.
And the consultant did address that in his report about the signature line, especially. That was in there. So, but I mean, that's basically, we're going to try to investigate the complaints as best we can with what information we can gather. And if people don't want to fill out the form or are unable to fill out the form, we do fill out the internal citizen complaint summary, and it gives us somewhere to go with it from there.
So this is just to be clear, it was the recommendation of the consultant. And so these are policy decisions, obviously, that are good for us to have, because we'll be making recommendations going forward. So Trustee Bockhorst and then Trustee Warren, please.
Thank you. So yeah, I just wanted, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to speak here, Ms. Stokebrand. So yes, I agree with, I think I agree with a lot of what President Rosick is saying regarding, we're talking about two different kinds of complaints here, right? Complaints against, or are we just uniquely speaking about officers?
Well, I think, it's a discussion that we have to decide among the three of us going forward, not necessarily today,
okay.
but are we going to allow informal complaints?
I understand the question. I'm asking to know if we're talking about two different kinds of complaints here. Is this just complaints against the police department? Well, regardless, I'm gonna go with what I heard from President Rosick, that I understand the sensitivity, especially if people are worried, but we want to protect not only our staff and employees, but also the public from being harassed by anonymous complaints by their neighbors or by other members, you know what I'm saying? So I understand that everything is getting logged and stuff like that, but I think as an individual, if I don't know the source, I'm going to look at things a lot differently than if you can follow up on it. And I would think that, I'll just use an example. Let's say someone complains about their neighbor, right? And then the police go over there and then they have body cam, you know what I'm saying? Like we want to make sure that we're protecting everyone here, not just the police department, not just the person lodging the complaint, but anyone who's involved in it as well. So I don't have an answer for that. I'm just throwing that out there. Just the rest of the committee can also consider that as well.
I think maybe it's
Hey, just a minute, President Rosick, I saw Trustee Warren had his hand up, and then you, and then just keeping in mind that we have a few more to go yet, and it's 6:34 and we've got 10 minutes.
No,
Warren?
I'll be quick then. I was just going to say, I do like the fact, my comment's a little higher level. I like the fact that we're logging both formal and informal complaints. I think that's vital for information integrity. And it's something where I could certainly see you're not seeing the whole field if you're not getting kind of a flavor of everything. When people can come in and request records on complaints and you're saying, well, we got these formal complaints and we didn't log informal. So I think just item 63 and putting informal complaints kind of through some of the same rigor that we put formal complaints. I like the fact that we're not really having a dividing line anymore. I think that solves some information issues that we've been having. So kind of regardless of, I think we can figure out what we do with anonymous complaints and figure out kind of how those are handled. But I really do like the fact that now we're kind of logging everything that registers as a complaint is going to kind of go through the same process, and information polls will be much truer, in terms of the information they're providing.
So just to be clear, you favor anonymous complaints, but you would rather it's anonymous or a complaint. No formal, no formal.
I guess I wasn't talking about it. I guess I didn't reach anonymous complaints. It's more of I like the fact that we're doing away with this distinction between formal and informal complaints and trying to get them all into the same system. I think judging by our conversation here, we have ways to go on, like how we handle anonymous complaints, how we follow up. And we can talk about that from a policy perspective, but I do like the fact that we're getting more information into the database so we can see what's going on with complaints.
Okay, President Rosick?
So really quickly, maybe this is a great compromise or suggestion and to think about as we move forward with the full board, is maybe if you're not willing to file a formal complaint, which is our process, then we would log a summary of an informal complaint, but we don't investigate. Either you want to launch a complaint or you just want it logged. And so maybe that's the distinction of it's logged, but there's no follow-up. If you want to go ahead and sign your name to a complaint, then we're going to investigate. I think maybe that's something to consider.
Just to be clear, then there would be nothing except they say, I want to file an informal complaint and nothing happens.
Unless you sign your name. Basically, you're just logging. They don't want to file a formal complaint. They don't want to not prosecute, but a formal complaint is an investigation. You know,
But the staff would still investigate
they would just log it. They would
they
somehow
would just log it, but not do any work on it.
correct, unless you sign your name for a complaint. And then you can dispatch to have an investigation or whatever you do for your follow-up in the police department.
Interesting.
Because you're going to be on body cams anyways, once that investigation starts, you know, that the follow-up to the complaint. So I just feel like you're either going to file a complaint or you're going to log an informal just to go on the record.
Trustee Bachhorst, and then we'll go back to the list, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so I agree again with what you were saying there, President Rozek, for a variety of reasons. And again, I understand the sensitivity and that we have to think of everyone's sensitivity as well. So I'll just give you a really quick example. A couple of years back, well, I don't need to do this. I agree with what she said. I don't think that we should investigate things if people aren't willing to put their name to them for the most part. Now, there could be exceptions and maybe I could bend on this, but we don't, I forget what it's called in law, you know, like where you have those frivolous lawsuits, like we really don't want to increase the police department's load or anyone's load or even the commission's based on some, yeah, we have to have a policy that makes sense. And I'm just kind of working through this right now, but I'll leave it at that. I'll think about maybe some examples later or not, but I agree. Like we should log the information definitely, but that information should still be confidential. So if you can't put your name to it, then you shouldn't be mentioning or allowed to enter in like, you know, specific data about, I couldn't just, you know, complain about my neighbor all the time anonymously and have the police sent over there and have their name on the record because I might want to get back at them. I'm using that as an example. I would never do that, but you know, some people would. And it's not fair for us to allow that kind of behavior. We have enough, you know, anonymous emails and enough anonymous, you know, things online. So we need to have something that has some substance. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I will try to take a comment at the end of this meeting, Chuck, though, but we've got less than 5 minutes. So I'm going to let Lieutenant Liebenthal please continue.
Okay, so moving on, we had item number 66 within the complaints there. Ensure that persons that file complaints are kept informed of the status. And again, obviously, if we know who that individual is, our policy 1010 does state that the chief of police or authorized designee will ensure that the complainant is notified of the disposition, sustained, not sustained, exonerated, unfounded policy failure, etc. The disposition of the complaint, and this will be documented in the investigation file. Again, our next steps in this area is we will want to bring the current complaint procedure before the commission here, the complaint form, complaint brochure for review and input, and to address the other items that were listed below that Trustee Warren had started to talk about earlier. Moving on.
Just to add, besides complaints, can we just have suggestions? I mean, I think one of the things that's important is to be able to take suggestions that like positive comments, positive, you know, constructive criticism. So besides complaints, every time you have a complaint tab on the internet, you should have, I think on your website, have suggestions too. Just a thought.
Point of order, Chair Stokebrand.
Yes.
I was just wondering, I understand that you've been able to ask questions and you're acknowledging yourself. So I kind of say for the fairness of this group, if that's the case, that the other members of this committee can also ask questions, because your questions aren't necessarily always follow-up or re-summarizing. So it's just for the fairness and the fact that we are all elected to represent. I would like us to have that ability as well.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say right now? Besides Mr. Carlson, who's not on the committee or staff. And Mr. Carlson, I will try to get to you. President Rozek.
I actually would like to hear from Chuck Carlson, Commissioner Carlson.
Okay, I'd like to give the staff time to get through their report, please. And then can we go to him if we have time? Trustee Bachhorst.
Yeah, I was going to say that I know we have 2 items and we had 45 minutes slotted for this, which obviously we need a lot more time. We have people here, we have people on the call. I know we have a DPW organizational study after this, but we are not hard and fast at 45 minutes on this. trustee Zuckerberg. We can still continue on but we might not get to the next item, and that
I
happens all
understand
the
your
time.
comments. Okay, Lieutenant Liebenthal, please continue.
Okay, so moving on into the community engagement area, we do have several current and ongoing initiatives, our walk and talk, ride along programs. Those have been advertised through our manager's memo and continue to be available to people and anyone who wants to partake in those. It's a very interactive and engaging activity that our officers do. And I believe some members of the board have gone through that, and it's something that we continue to offer. We also will continue when block parties resume after our COVID world that we're in at this point, continue to stop at all of those, engage with the public in those manners. We are going to be doing the coffee with the cops. So we're going to start doing a little twist with that, though, that we realize with the COVID world that we are in, that they may not be as available to people, or people may not be as willing to partake in the face-to-face type situation. So now we're going to start doing those via Zoom. And we're going to be handling those every third Thursday of the month, starting this March here. And it's just an opportunity for our community members to kind of get to know the officers and, build relationships. No specific agendas are going to be put out for those. It's just a chance to talk with the police and interact and get to know each other a little bit, get to know what people's thoughts and concerns are. Item 4 within that, our town hall meeting. We are planning on doing a town hall meeting via Zoom on March 9th. The purpose of this town hall is just basically give an overview of the 2020 crime statistics, our police organizations, receive feedback from the community, and be able to just answer some questions. And our next step within that is we are planning on trying to do a Citizens Police Academy, where citizens will have a chance to come and experience some of the training, some of the things that officers go through in the course of learning how to do this job and going through an actual police academy type situation with that. That's something that we are planning for later on this year. The future items to be addressed are listed below that in that particular area there. Continuing on with traffic enforcement would be the next area.
Let me ask a question.
Items that we've completed within that.
Just a moment. President Rozek?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention way back when I was public safety chair for 2 years, we had a great idea to add to the town hall that was brought up more than once. And I just wanted to refresh so that the newer trustees know. It was the baseball cards were a big hit of getting to know the officers and the children, getting to know each other from an early age and getting to know their names and making them feel comfortable. I don't know if we have enough money to do baseball cards anymore, but it really was a hit back in the day. And so if there's any type of activity once COVID is gone and that we're more face-to-face, that we can interact with children and our police officers, I think that's worthwhile exploring, as in addition to the town hall, in addition to the other items that Lieutenant Liebenthal has mentioned. But the children in our community, getting to know the police officers' names is very important. Thank you.
I'm not familiar with baseball cards, but it sounds good. Trustee Warren?
Yeah, just a quick question. Just maybe could you give me a 30-second thumbnail on Police Citizens Academy? Just a little bit more. Is that a one-day thing? Is it a course of events? Is it kind of more of a classroom thing, or is it kind of getting out and like doing exercises and things like that? Just maybe 30 seconds more on that.
Sure.
I'll take that. So the idea behind there would be a 6 to 8 week program, meeting once a week for 2 hours a day, and breaking it up over a variety of topics. So police operations, detective bureau, use of force, those types of scenarios. And then a part of that would be that, we would have the members of the academy do a ride along with the officers, and a variety of the officers would present at the Citizens Academy. So that is an opportunity to meet a lot of different officers. So we'd have a lot of engagement between those in the group and the public. And we used to do them at one point, and then the village wanted to do a village-wide academy. And so they did, not only police department had one day with the fire department, and then DPW had a day, finance had a day. And so we acquiesced to that. And so we stopped the academy. but we're going to go ahead and, if hopefully things change with COVID, but try to do that in fall. And so it's always been a very popular event. So I hope that answers the question.
And was it sort of an all ages, like first grade and up, or is it adult only?
Typically it's 18 and above.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on into the traffic enforcement bucket that we have here. Some of the items that we've completed. Item number 18, supervisors should routinely review body cameras and in-car videos to ensure that stops are conducted in a professional manner. Our policy has been updated to ensure that supervisors are routinely reviewing the body cameras of the officers within their shift here. Item 19, agency should continuously review data from traffic stops. It should also produce a semi-annual report that describes the data. As we talked about previously, we're trying to work with our vendor to try to enhance our reporting capabilities of the information contained within there. But part of that is our traffic stop data form, which is out there now, and we're utilizing, and we're able to extract information out of that. And this information in particular would pertain to the traffic stops is going to be included in our monthly reports that are coming up here. Item 36, provide regular reports about police activity, and the department regularly provides monthly reports of police activity that are posted on the department's website. Moving forward, these reports will include the data pertaining to the traffic stops. Not only are we putting the monthly reports out there, but our activity in general is also out there. Our weekly logs are posted on our website, so everyone can see the types of calls that we go to, dates, times, locations, things of that nature. Future items to be addressed are listed down below that segment there. The next segment that we have in the document here is policy changes. Now, before we talk about that, we should note that we utilize Lexipol for our policy manual, and it provides a fully developed state-specific policies researched and written by subject matter experts and vetted extensively by attorneys. The policies are based on nationwide standards and best practices, and are also incorporating state, federal laws, regulations where appropriate. The policy manual is continually updated by Lexipol with current standards and laws. Lexipol's legal and policy content, development teams monitor for new legislation, statutes, case law on state and federal levels, looking for anything that impacts the policy content. They also keep up with research and reports influencing public safety, government best practices, and when an update is needed, those updates are pushed out basically through our policy manual electronically. Now, the items that we have completed in terms of policy review and policy changes, we should note that the items listed here were made, for the most part, were just clarifications. Slightly stronger language was needed in some places, some additional more specifics to the policy, things of that nature, but nothing that will cause any legal ramifications. So it's important to know that.
And so basically shall became will.
Right, in a lot of cases, yeah. So if you look at like item number 38, all the terms within the policy, like seriousness, conducted energy device, should be defined, and policy section 300.1.1 contains the definitions for the terms used within the policy. For item
It does take some flexibility away from the force, because obviously if it's a busy day, you have to get this done. And
right.
It will change your prioritization. Trustee Warren, and then did President Rosick have a question?
Yep. Thank you. And maybe this is more of a process-oriented question. So Lexipol pushes policies, and I assume those policies are incorporated then into our policies. It's kind of the gold standard here, or we'll call it, that everyone's using. That's kind of what's been vetted. It sounds like. So we made all these changes. When they push new policies in these areas, aren't they going to supersede? How do we confirm that the changes that we make survive the new pushed policies? And maybe that's not well asked, but I'm just concerned that when the new policies supersede, they'll supersede it back to what it was before we made Shorewood specific policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can answer that if you want. So That's a very good question. I think the important aspect to this, and you being an attorney, you understand the legal ramifications of certain words. And so the words that, that matter are the words shall, will, and others, right? And so when we start changing policy language from will to shall, you are really restricting the ability for discretion. And so in some of these, what we felt, and I think that the changes that we currently made, don't overall change or cause any more risk to the village. And so we made those changes with that in mind. And so when they push out new policies in the future, we have the ability to override those. And so we could stick with what we currently have. Now, if there's anything within this that you feel that shouldn't have been changed, we can certainly address that as well. Hope that answers the question.
And so how would we know? Without me reading Lexipol, how would I know if something, would you tell us if something from Lexipol came out and said, we're recommending this, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's not going to work for Shorewood. How does it work?
So that would be something we'd have to discuss on how you'd want to, if you want to be notified of each and all of those changes. And we can certainly do that. It's sometimes it can be a lot, sometimes it's not. But again, I think the emphasis is that, the Lexipol manual is highly vetted. So, but that's a policy decision, I think, moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And President Rozek?
Thank you. Just quickly, I do want to say that the consultant, what I remember very vividly was the consultant saw what I have been saying as well. This is the policy board. The board does policy. And we've really been left out in the last 7 years that I've been on the board from making policy for the police department. And I do feel very strongly that we get in a better role of oversight and policy making. So any opportunity, I don't care how much data or you feel like you're overwhelming us, if it's an email or an update, we always have the choice as an elected official to read or scan or not open. But if we can get more, just keep it in the back of our minds. I believe that this board wants to start being involved in the policy making in the police department. And so anything and everything that we can do, even overcompensate in that area, is very important to me as one of 7. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Lieutenant Liebenthal, did you have something else yet?
Yeah, we just had a few more items under there that we've completed within the policy area. Item 39, it was suggested that the DAT system be included within that policy as an attachment. We have now added the student manual for the DAT system to that actual particular policy. For item 40, policy 300.7, supervisor responsibilities, is suggested that a supervisor that change the language so that it would a supervisor will respond to a use of force incident scene. The policy has been updated to read: a supervisor will respond to a reported application of force if reasonably available. Item 41 for policy 300.9, training. It suggested we change the sentence to read: proficiency training for personnel who have been issued CED shall occur every year. And the policy has been updated that personnel who have been issued CEDs shall proficiency training for personnel who have been issued CEDs will occur every year.
What does that mean? The change prior, you said if available. What does that change mean?
I'm sorry, what's your question?
So the recommendation that was changed in the policy language about reacting or investigating or responding to use of force if available was added. An officer will respond.
Previously it was shall and now it's will.
If available.
If available. Well, I mean, there may be a situation where a supervisor is not available to respond to that particular scene at that particular moment. If they're available, they should be responding to it. But for example, am I going to leave a situation where we're hands-on in a use of force of our own to restrain somebody? Am I going to leave that and leave an officer by themselves to go and respond to another situation where use of force had already occurred and is over? So if that makes sense, I mean, basically, if you're saying that they shall respond, you're basically handcuffing the supervisor that they have to respond regardless of whatever else that they have going on at that particular moment. So we're just leaving some leeway for that when they're available, they will respond. Excuse me. Let's see, where was I? Item 42, our conducted energy device policy, policy 300. It was suggested that we change the policy to read that members carrying the CED shall perform a spark test to the unit prior to every shift, and that policy has been updated to read that. Policy 300.8, item 43, supervisor responsibility. A supervisor shall respond to all incidents where a CED was activated, and policy has been updated. A supervisor shall respond to all incidents where a CED was activated. Item 44, 300.9, training. It was suggested that we change the sentence to read that proficiency training for personnel who have been issued CEDs shall occur every year, and that training has been, or the policy has been updated to read as such. Future items to be addressed. Item 51, our vehicle pursuit policy. That's one that probably needs a little bit more level of discussion before we go and just unilaterally change a policy. There's quite a bit of risk that is assumed by the village in those types of situations. So it's something that I think would warrant further discussion before we go and make any changes to that area.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to our police organizational structure and internal practices area, we've completed item 11. We should determine if SHPD should continue to conduct a village bank deposit. We're no longer taking the village bank deposit to the bank at this point in time. That was a big item that the consultant had on his list. Item 69, when conducting a use of force review, staff should memorialize their investigation and rationale for the decision. We have implemented a review process utilizing our newly trained defense and arrest tactic certified instructor, who's Officer Govani. He is going to be an integral part of our review process, as well as a formal review form, which is one of the attachments that was in the packet there that you should have included in that. It's our Shorewood Police Department use of force report review, excuse me. And there's multiple components with the initial supervisor, the DAT review, and the operations commander, all taking part in the review before it even ever gets to the chief for his final review at that point.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant Liebenthal. I think we can read through the PSC stuff before the March 1 meeting. If a trustee does not have a question, or President Rosick at this point, I would like to entertain the question from Chuck Carlson, who's been waiting. Is there, Lieutenant Liebenthal, is that okay with you? Were you?
Yeah, the only other thing I had left on the memo was co-production of public safety approach that was on here, but
I would like you to finish that part. I think that's very important.
okay, so move ahead with that then.
Sorry, Chuck, just a minute.
Okay, so included in the consultant's report was discussion regarding who plays what role in overseeing what the police department does, and he referred to it as a co-production of public safety. And so just going through some of those items that were on that list there. Item number 28, the Village Board of Trustees provides oversight of the police department through communication with residents, policymaking, and budget formulation. Item number 29, the Village Board of Trustees and the Public Safety Committee conduct focused inquiries about police practices, procedures, and exercise oversight through public hearings and budget. Item number 31, Shorewood Village Administration ensure implementation of trustee policy, oversee the budget, review police department activity, and ensure that the collective bargaining agreement does not include impediments to effective internal control. Item number 32, the Shorewood Police Commission oversees hiring, discipline, and termination of sworn personnel. And item 34, the Shorewood Police Department provides an annual report of police activities and in particular pertaining to race and gender. That's all ongoing things that we are currently doing within the department and within the village itself. The next steps that we would be bringing to the or next steps that we have on the list here is Human Relations Commission, provide a forum for community members to share their views about the Shorewood Police Department. And then the final item is the future item to be addressed as Village Board Trustee, Shorewood Police Department. Review use of force incidents, internal investigations when completed. That's something that's for further discussion down the road.
Okay, thank you. And that item 33, is that the March 9 event or is that just a police department?
The March 9 event is just with us, just a town hall meeting at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. President Rosick?
Sure. I noticed the police commission role is kind of remaining the same in the policy update. And I just wanted to say before Chuck goes that I believe that for use of force, I would want to consider that the police commission gets a report on that either monthly or when they meet, whenever their meetings are. So a report of use of force because we are documenting it. I think that's it's something they could be reviewing just to, so if someone's having oversight. And I also think that the police commission should have a real role in overseeing the complaint process, whether it's on a police officer or whether it's from within our community. And so that I would like to see added in the future, or at least discussed among board members when it gets to the village board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do think that, let's see, I had a thought, but I lost my train of thought. So, Mr. Carlson, did a trustee or Lieutenant Liebenthal anything else, or Chief Nimmer? Otherwise, I'll take one quick comment from. Go ahead, Mr. Carlson.
Hi, I'll give my address. I'm 2606 East Olive Street, and I'm on the police commission. I was appointed to the police commission in May. So I have been looking into the complaint process since that point. And one of the things that is an essential element that the complaint process allows is for community input into how policing is done and why it is essential in organizations like NACOL, which is the National Association for the Oversight of Law Enforcement, and Center for Policing Equity, why those organizations emphasize the complaint process as being overseen by or cooperation between a civilian body, a police commission, which there are state statutes that allow it, and the police department. So that someone who may feel that they are wronged by the police department, instead of their only option to be going to the police department for that there is a non-police department board, which exists in Shorewood, which Section 504 of the rules and regulations of the Shorewood Police Commission allow for the police commission to receive complaints and to track those complaints. So the importance of the community having a say in that process. And that is general standard. Now, the anonymous, this is why the anonymous complaints are also important. If there is a body like the police commission that is looking into the complaints can be investigated with the police and the police commission on an anonymous complaint. And that way, someone who may live in Milwaukee or may be afraid to do it would feel more comfortable doing it. And that's where I think it gets to what Trustee Warren was talking about, the governance of the process. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so the informal, the point outlined in the rules and regulations you mentioned is called an informal complaint process. My understanding is at this point, they use the same forms as the police department. And so, but they, as nearly as I know, no one has filed, has the police commission received a complaint, Mr. Carlson?
Police commission, as far as as a police commissioner since May, I have not, but I know of a complaint that was filed in September. So I do know for a fact of a complaint that was filed. So I know it was not brought to the police commission.
President Rozek?
I want to fully thank Commissioner Carlson for being here tonight and fully echo everything he said tonight about the police commission's role in allowing a citizen's oversight. It's very difficult to make a complaint and have the complaint against a police officer and have that complaint investigated solely by the police department. It's an uncomfortable and sometimes untrusting situation. And so I think that it would enhance transparency. And I 100% agree with Commissioner Carlson that we need the police commission to have an active role in the complaint process. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Carlson, a complaint has been filed and it has not been acted upon. Is it, so it's a,
Oh, I don't know if it's been acted upon. I don't know. I just know it was compiled or was filed in September. I spoke to the person knew I was on the complaint, was on the police commission. So they brought it to my attention that it had been filed. I checked with them in January and they said they had not gotten a result from that.
so I guess my question here is, when you have outlined in the rules and regulations an informal complaint process, if it's informal, is there no follow through? Is there, you know, where does this go? I mean, one of the things it does say here is, at its discretion, could refer to the police chief for investigation and possible disciplinary action.
The current process doesn't include the police commission. I think that's what we're saying. Informal, formal. There is no involvement of complaints going to the police commission. And that's what I was saying at the beginning to Lieutenant Liebenthal when we were adjusting the policy language, that it defines the police commission's role as exactly what it was in the past that we want to change, which is just disciplinary. It doesn't say anything about the complaint process. One of the biggest things that came out of the study was citizen oversight in conjunction with the police department when there's complaints filed against a police officer. And so I do believe it's very important that we change that. As it exists today, the reason Commissioner Carlson has not gotten informal or formal notification of a complaint, either kind, is because it doesn't exist right now. That process isn't in place. So I think what I'm saying and what Commissioner Carlson is saying is we need to, as policymakers, change that policy and allow for the citizen board, for the police commission to have a more active role.
Change it or create it?
Create it. So change the current policy to create a process where the police commission is forwarded any type of complaint, informal or formal, and they are actively investigating and overseeing with the police department in partnership.
Because the process is outlined here, right? It looks like a process is outlined, but it's not being utilized. I don't know.
Correct.
Is it semantics? Change it or create it? I don't want to get stuck in the.
It's forwarding complaints to the police commission.
I would use the word implement what exists.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else? It's 7:10. Yeah. Well, we're all on the next committee. So Trustee Warren?
I think we have to move to, I'll move to adjourn the meeting of the Public Safety Committee.
I'll second. Is there Trustee Bachris, is there your back? All right, and we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
And without further ado, I'll call the Public Works Committee to order at 7:10. Leanne, sorry, we're not giving you quite as much time as you had signed up for, but can you get this done in about 20 minutes as opposed to 45?
I will do my best. So I'll jump right into the item related to our organizational analysis recommendation. And that was recommendation 12, evaluate the option of contracting out street lighting and traffic device maintenance services. You can hear me, right? Okay, just making sure. So the memo briefly reviews the responsibilities of the one public works employee who covers electrical or streetlight maintenance, and then traffic signal device maintenance, and then also lists the other tasks that that person is responsible for. that is just to provide you some context as we talk about options for contracting out services, kind of like the conversations we've had to this point. Because we are a small organization, all of our employees are responsible for a fairly broad spectrum of tasks and duties. So,
Leanne, could President Rosick, do you have a question?
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry, my mouse is touchy. It's just a general question before we start into the specifics of an administrative implementation of a general study. I'm confused on, we did an org analysis and the village board forwarded the org analysis for more specific action plan development to the committee, and we're policymakers and we're already jumping into staff bringing very specific administrative recommendations, which I'm fine with. That's usually just a regular agenda item. But as for the study, I thought the next step for committee work was to develop what are we, in general, the larger picture of what are the steps we're going to follow to look at this organizational analysis and begin implementation of what are the bigger policy issues. So I just don't want to lose sight of what the village board recommended down to committee. I do understand that we have some administrative things that show up on committee, but it is under the org analysis, which threw me when I saw the agenda. So I would, if in the future, we should be focusing, in my opinion, at committee level, which the board forwarded down, on the org analysis and what are the things that heading into budget, do we really need to look at, asset management, the whole org, what we set out in the RFP to do with the org analysis, and let the policymakers then decide an action plan of what we want to be working on.
This is actually one of the items in the action plan that the board approved on January 20th.
Okay, it's very specific. I don't know why we referred it down to the committee then. Thank you.
Okay, then you want to continue on?
Sure. So as the memo note, and I apologize, I'm trying to do the condensed version of this, but if I'm getting too far ahead of myself, please ask me to slow down. So we have done some very preliminary review of outsourcing options. That was the specific recommendation in the org analysis, and it was one of the, I believe, 8 or 9 recommendations that the full village board did approve Public Works Committee review of and approve a timeline for. So that outsourcing option, we in the memo lists some benefits and challenges of outsourcing these particular tasks. Then we also did some very, very, very rough takeoff costs on possible annual costs for outsourcing these duties. You'll find that information in your memo. Again, that's provided as context, just as an understanding of how all of these different pieces fit together. And these costs are potential annual costs for costs related to the electrical duties of this particular FTE, of which electrical and signal is about half of the time. So the very, very rough estimates of those costs, if they were contracted on an annual basis, is just about $70,000. We did and have had or attempted to have conversations with electrical contractors about their interest in assuming those duties under contract. And we did not receive any responses to those requests for further conversations. We have since tried to do some follow-up conversation. Hey, we asked you about this a couple of months ago, didn't hear from you. Just want to make sure you received our initial, and still kind of crickets. So one could read from that there's not a lot of interest on the private side to do work on our streetlight system. So we also then looked at if we were, the individual currently in this position has indicated an intent to retire this calendar year. I think we probably all agree that streetlights and traffic signals are a necessary service that the village really ought to provide. So we need to determine how we are going to do that going forward.
Yeah, I think we gotta
Another
keep those on.
option.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people would agree. Another option would be simply to replace that employee when he does retire with a new hire. As mentioned in the memo, this is a very complicated, may not be the correct word. It's a bit of an unusual system. Certainly, if you were installing a streetlight system today, this is not at all how you would design or build it. And it requires some special skill to maintain. We've had multiple conversations with current employees and none have indicated an interest in assuming those duties. It's a challenging job and it can be a very dangerous job. And we would recommend if, for any further conversations that the board might have about replacing this position is that we certainly make sure that that person has the right type of training for safety and liability reasons. So if we were looking to recruit to replace this person in this position, it would be our strong recommendation that they have an some type of electrical background, most likely a licensed electrician. So the challenge there, I mean, that's great in terms of what it would bring to our organization. I think the challenge there is that, in an organization the size of ours, we really need everyone on board for all tasks. We really make every attempt to cross-train all of our employees. There's some concern that a licensed electrician might not be that interested in covering a garbage route. If the need arose, may not be very interested in responding after hours for winter operations. So, those are some challenges that that particular scenario presents. The third option of probably several, but of the three that are just highlighted in this particular memo would be possibly examining more of a hybrid option where we would continue our efforts to contract the electrical maintenance services. And that staff position would be replaced, but duties would be shifted. One option would be that person could cover all of the sign and barricade and traffic control responsibilities, along with winter maintenance. And then basically the other half of the FTE could be used to provide support and assistance to the vehicle maintenance group. So the memo does not ask for any specific action. However, we're presenting this in large part to lay it out for you. Perhaps if you wish tonight, you can provide us with some preliminary thoughts or responses. Certainly this is going to be scheduled again. And with some public works recommendation, I think we would take it obviously to the full board for a full board discussion, consideration, and direction. But that's really, really fast. So I'm sure I glossed over some things. Happy to answer any questions that you might have now or, in over the next several days.
Well, I guess I'll ask. So outsourcing, it looks like it's something we've looked into, obviously by the write-up, but is there, it looks like if nobody's interested, I don't know that that's a real option if we can't get anyone to do it. I mean, is that your, I mean, I think we should look at that option. Make no mistake, we should look at all of our options, but if nobody's willing to come in and deal with our kind of legacy electric systems, I don't know that it's tough. I guess I would almost, do we need to, is there any way to realistically consider it because we've had nobody express any interest, or is it something where you feel like we would find someone if we kept looking?
Yeah, I think the latter is certainly possible. Keep in mind that, these are skilled trades and they're used to being able to bill for all of the time they put into anything. And we're kind of asking them to do that under a model that's a little bit different than they're used to. So I think it's certainly possible, and I wouldn't necessarily give up at this point. We could continue to attempt to have those conversations. If they think we're just fishing, then they're probably less likely to give us the time to have the conversation. If they understand that this is a serious effort that we're making, I think they may be more willing to sit down with us.
Sorry, thank you. And then one more follow-up question, just skipping down to the hybrid option. What's the cost on, it seems like that might end up being more expensive. So I'm just kind of curious as to, I didn't see a cost breakdown, but it seems like if we do half FTE plus the more complicated work, we might end up paying a lot for the more complicated work and for bringing someone on. So it's almost like instead of making it cheaper, it might get more expensive. Does that square with your thinking, or am I off there?
I think it could. It depends at the point in time in which you look at this, right? If we are operating as we are right now with 17 hourly staff positions, because right now we are not paying hourly wages on a second mechanic. Certainly that option would be more expensive than right now. If we were looking at that option to provide to do the half, or to contract the electrical work, but keep the electrician, I'm using air quotes, position, and in addition to the half-time duties that they currently have responsibility for, you give them a half, the other half of their time goes into the mechanics shop, then I think we're probably at a wash from where we were, say, a year ago today. Because we're at 18. No, that's not correct. You're basically, you basically returned half of a mechanic as an example, and then you're contracting out half of the electrical duties. At our next discussion, I will be certain to lay that out with a little more detail under the service, the hybrid service option, with the financial implications of that.
Okay. So going forward, what do you, I mean, I guess it doesn't sound like we have a recommendation at this point for which one to pursue, because we've had such a truncated discussion. Do you need a recommendation on it, or is this something where this is the introduction and we'll come back and we'll talk about it and we'll have a recommendation out of that? Or is this something that goes up to the board? What is your thought process in terms of next steps here?
I think my hope is that because the Public Works Committee was tasked with an evaluation and review of these particular recommendations, that we would have another discussion and that the committee would come to some sort of a recommendation for the full board to consider,
okay,
whatever that might be. But I would ask, we will certainly work to schedule more time on this item in the very near future. And then I would just ask in that time period, if you have additional questions or would like to have additional conversations, please reach out to Joe and I. We would be more than happy to continue that discussion and to get you all the information that you need, and so that we can package it better and more comprehensively for the next discussion.
that sounds good. Trustee Stokebrand?
So it looks to me like if we go with the hybrid or the replacing the electrician, we're basically putting someone into a job for part of the time that they wouldn't regularly do. whether it's driving a snowplow or being a mechanic, right?
Actually, it would be the intent that we would contract that to a private electrical service. And so they would basically be on standby or on call for us. And if we had a street light outage or traffic signal lockdown, we would call them. And then under the terms of whatever contract, they would have a defined period of response where they would have to come in and take care of that item. But they would not be employees, and we would not be expecting them to do any task other than street light or traffic signal related.
So if we go with hybrid, it's still a staff position, but it's got a new name, and it's responsible for not the non-emergency part of our streetlights.
So they would basically, right,
So if
yearly.
if streetlights go out, let's say somebody drives into one and it doesn't work. I guess that's not
The
necessarily.
contractor would be called. The contractor would be called to respond to that.
And would there be this would be the streetlights and traffic signals too, yes?
Yes, streetlights and traffic signals.
So if
So
someone's driving to a light post and the traffic light goes out at Oakland and Capitol, we would, with the hybrid option, we would be waiting for someone from the private contractor option to come over, right?
Correct.
The police would have to
Correct.
fill in.
Well, we would, depending on exactly what happened, we would have someone respond after hours as we do now to secure the area and make sure there was no danger to the traveling public. But in terms of actually beginning to make repairs, no, that would wait for the contractor to respond. We would have to spend quite a bit of time on that service contract. We'd have to have some discussions about what we thought were appropriate response times, and that would be written into the contract. So I would, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but if we would probably define emergency responses, we would define, more typical responses, like a street light, a section of street light goes out, we would probably define a period of X for response. If someone knocked down a traffic signal, we would have a much shorter response period time that would be defined in the contract. But we would have to do some work to identify every possible scenario and then assign what we believe the community would consider acceptable response times for each of those scenarios.
And so with the hybrid, we still have a village electrician, just not doing streetlights.
I would assume that we would eliminate that title altogether. That person would be responsible for the utility we would be responsible for the locating of the underground facilities. They would do all the signage, all the barricades that they do now. They would participate in winter maintenance. It's the 900-ish hours that they would have been doing electrical will then be assigned to something else. One example being to fill in that gap for vehicle maintenance support.
I guess I'm inclined to go with hiring another electrician to do the job that the gentleman who's retiring would do. If Glendale has somebody, but nobody has responded to our query for outsourcing, I find that interesting.
Glendale's system is very different than ours. They have a fully modern system. It's all encased in conduit with pull boxes. It is not a 480 volt system. It's very different, and it's much easier to maintain and much less expensive to do so.
So I guess until we can upgrade our system, I would favor keeping the person that we can count on to take care of our system.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of table stakes. We got to keep the traffic lights on. I mean, again, I think we have another whole conversation about this, so don't want to jump the gun too much, but yeah, it sounds kind of like it's one thing we can't jeopardize, keeping our traffic lights on and working. So I don't want to play around with that. So I'm leaning towards, just keeping the position and replacing as well. But I see that if nobody has anything else, we are at 7:31, so I don't want to delay the other meeting. Anybody? Well, thank you, Leanne. I appreciate it. It's good to start. This has been a valuable conversation. It's good to start talking about this, so we frame it up for the next meeting and are ready to make a recommendation. And with that, go ahead.
Would you like to defer the second item to a future date?
Defer. Oh, there was another.
Workload. Yep, there's another one.
Oh, yeah, let's defer. Do we need to make a motion to do that, or can we just put it on?
Well,
I-
let's move to adjourn.
Yeah, I guess does it just, if we move to adjourn, can we just, does it just get deferred?
Yep.
Okay,
So moved.
Second.
motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 3-0. We are adjourned at 7:32. Thank you very much, Leanne.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne.